Hello everyone, thank you for checking out my video. My name is Jeff. This is Questions from Comments 46. This is where I grab questions that I find in the comments and I answer them as best I can. So if you want to get your question here on Question from Comments, you can just leave a question in the comments. It doesn't have to be in this video. It could be on any old video that you happen to be working on. And especially if you have a question about that video, that would be a good place to leave it because I can then just see what's going on. Gonna get right into this. Thank you if you've chosen to subscribe. If you haven't yet, I hope you'll do so now. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Truly appreciate the support. That's also where you can get PDFs and MP3s of my practices, so you can take them wherever your heart's desires take you. Let's get into the questions, shall we? Do you have any earplug brand recommendations? I'm going from mostly acoustic gigs to singing over a three-piece band. I'm finding I have to strain in my chest voice as an alto mezzo, and I'm trying to avoid that. Slight interjection here. My hat is figuratively and literally off to you. I really think that that observation is excellent, and I commend you for looking for alternate ways so that you can avoid straining your voice. Truly well done. Whatever ideas you can throw my way would be so appreciated. Love your videos. I warm up daily with them. Hope to throw you some donations when I get better gigs. That's very kind of you. I truly appreciate that. Okay, so first of all, I think I've got an idea here. Well, I know I have an idea because I thought about this before I started, rolling. So let's skip all that. I'm not sponsored by anybody, so for what I'm gonna say, it's just my opinion. I don't get money from earplug companies or individuals to say these things. So just, hopefully that ends at a layer of credulity. My first advice to you would be to get in-ear monitors. Those systems were originally extremely expensive, not nearly so expensive as they used to be, very doable. If you got them, you might even be able to get into a system for everybody, and everyone's experience would be greatly enhanced by being able to hear themselves and all the other things in the ensemble that they wanted to hear. So that would be my first suggestion. That's probably the most expensive suggestion. The next most expensive suggestion would be to get custom-made earplugs made. If you look up in your area an audiologist, most of them will be able to either do it themselves or they can recommend someone to you. And if you've never had this done before, it's not my favorite thing to do, but trusted professionals, it's going to be okay. And they will make a mold of your ear canals. And the bonus here is that the filters that you get for those earplugs are interchangeable. So if you're doing let's say it was only a modestly louder gig that night, you could put in attenuators that would only attenuate what you need, so you'd still be able to hear a lot more of what's happening around you. And then if it got louder, you could swap those attenuators out for ones that block more of the overall noise, the decibel information coming to your ears. The last suggestion I have would be, there are many companies. Now I have a pair, and the name is unfortunate. They are called Eargasm earplugs. They have swappable attenuators, but they're not custom made. So they're very inexpensive, and you can swap out the attenuators to have different degrees of dB reduction is what you're looking for there. The fourth and final solution would be that if you go to your local drugstore, they will have different foam earplugs that have different levels of attenuation, but those are going to be kind of the worst case scenario. if you forgot your regular earplugs and you really needed some, then that would be maybe something to consider. But in-ear monitors would be first, custom would be next. Some of the many companies like Eargasm, again, no affiliations. And then last, the foam that you can find in your local drugstore or pharmacy. I have 2 questions that have been going around in my mind since I've been practicing. Being a tenor, my voice has become better and brighter. Given the fact that baritones and tenors share part of the range, if I can't give my voice the depth I hear in a baritone, is that because of being a tenor, or could it be technique? Well, a little bit of each, really. I mean, it could be technique. I've never heard you sing, I'm afraid, so I can't really speak to that. But, those are the differences between the different Fox. Baritones will have different power zones where they are most comfortable, where their voices are the most lush and voluminous. And you, as a tenor, will have different areas that you will have that flexibility and that character and those soaring mid and upper mid-range and higher pitches that can be so desirous. So it is certainly possible that your technique is playing into this a little bit, but there are differences between the various Fox. There was another question here. I can reach very high notes with my head voice without using falsetto. Is there any danger to the vocal folds in going that high? Without hearing you, hard to say. I don't know. You haven't given me the specific notes with which to deal with, but what I would say is this. If you're a tenor, then that means your primo passaggio, the first point of registration change, happens around here. This is not thought of as the break. Most vocalists will sing past, most tenors and baritones will sing past their primo passaggio without noticing it too much. Now, for a baritone, that's going to be a little lower, but for the tenors, it's going to be somewhere in here. You'll sing past it. You might not even know it's there. The break, or the secondo passaggio, is usually about here. Now, here's the thing. The area between those 2 points is called the zona di passaggio. It is sometimes also called the mixed range. That term, however, mixed range, gets used differently by different schools of thought. It can also mean just using your head voice, is also how it's referred, but they're using it as if to say you're mixing your chest and head voice together. The reality is that if you're using your head voice or cricothyroid dominant singing voice properly, then that's already happening. That's why it's called cricothyroid dominant as opposed to cricothyroid, right? The cricothyroid muscles, the ones that are elongating the vocal folds, are dominant in there, but the thyroarytenoid muscles, the chest voice muscles, are still in use. They're still working. So, at any rate, mixed ranges from here to here. So you're already starting to use your cricothyroid muscles a little bit as you approach the secondo passaggio, the break. If you are making a smooth transition over the secondo passaggio, then for most tenors, they will have another registration event around here. If you are preventing this registration event from occurring, then it's quite possible that you could be fatiguing your voice a little bit. But again, I don't know the specifics of the range that you are singing in. Maybe leave a bit more information down below and we can talk about it in the comments. But generally speaking, if you are making balanced transitions across your registration events and you are observing your registration events, honoring them, one might say, then most of your vocal fatigue, you can avoid a lot of that. But again, I've never heard you sing, so I can't really say for sure what you're doing. You might consider finding a local teacher and getting a lesson or two and having them evaluate you. If you like, you could even talk to me about it as well. I do lessons all the time. Hi Jeff, I have a question. What do I consider my voice to be if the warm-up for baritone is too low for me, but the warm-up for the tenor is too high? Where am I and what am I doing wrong? Now again, I haven't heard this individual sing to my knowledge. But they are describing a phenomenon that occurs very frequently. There's an old joke about it, actually, in the sort of vocal pedagogical world, is that there are two categories of male vocalists. There are baritones and untrained tenors. The reason why we say that is that because very frequently, tenors who haven't figured out how to sing across their secondo passaggio effectively will get these very limited amounts of usable range. If you think about it for a second, and I'll show you here on the piano, a tenor, frequently their lower boundary starts to come in around here, and they'll still be able to sing these pitches to a certain degree, but you'll start to hear the change in tone quality, and they start to get into vocal fry and stuff like that. But singing a song with any degree of authority, they're going to be limited to about that C natural B down here. And then they'll find that they can't do anything beyond E or F. That's a very limited amount of range, less than 2 octaves. Most popular songs these days, you need about an octave and a fifth or 2 octaves to be able to sing the melody without doing some kind of weird octave transpositions. Like, it's not really a transposition, it's just moving the octave from one down in order to make it work for your voice. And the reason why we say you've got baritones and untrained tenors is because the baritone vocalist can frequently sing the melody with the appropriate octaves in it, just down an entire octave, because they'll be able to sing from the G or maybe even the F down here all the way to this D or E potentially, you know, even F. Sometimes, even if they haven't gotten their registration events figured out, they might still be able to do that. That's 2 octaves right there. So, I haven't heard you sing, to my knowledge. But what you're describing is not uncommon. I would investigate your registration event practice. If you're unfamiliar with what I'm talking about when I say that, there is a series of 3 videos. I recommend it to folks all the time here on the channel. It's older, so I will look a little different. I will have a lot more hair. But the information in that series of videos is just as correct today as it was back then. And it begins the process of going over the registration event, learning some of the techniques for it, and helping you get started with that. And that may help you understand more about your voice, how it's working, and open up a bit more of that range for you, maybe. Is it known how lip trills work? Not clear to me what the difference is between setting appoggio and sending the breath through the larynx in singing or doing the trills. Seems the pitch is set in the larynx, and once past the chords, you either set lips and tongue, maybe throat and jaw, to get words, or just buzz the lips on that pitch. But the trills allow easier scales and high notes. How do they allow easier shifts from thyroarytenoid to cricothyroid dominance? Not complaining, you understand. Oh, and I was going to suggest another video devoted to lip trills, but then I realized any video can be done with trills instead of 1 or more vocalizations. So from the bottom to the top, absolutely correct. I used to say this all the time. I don't say it much any longer in my videos. What I used to say was, if you're unfamiliar with this exercise, you might go through it with the lip trill before trying the vowels. But the person who wrote this comment makes a very good reminder, a very good point. You can do any of these videos, any of the exercises, and I would advise you, if you are unfamiliar with the vowel changes or unfamiliar with the patterns or the range tessitura that they are in, instead of doing the vowels that I'm doing in the video first, do the lip trills first. That is an excellent observation and an excellent suggestion. Thank you for reminding me of that. You are also correct. When the lip trill is a funny exercise. It is not the end-all be-all of vocalizations, but it can be very useful if you can do it. The pitch is not the lips buzzing. like a trumpet player when they play their instrument, would be a better approximation of it, right? Because they have a cup there. We are all now grateful that I am not a brass wind player. But you get my point. The lips aren't really what's making the pitch. You are singing an vowel behind the closed lips. And the closed lips are there for two reasons. Well, you could extrapolate a lot of different reasons why we want the lips to be burbling that way. But when you do the lip trill, or if I don't sing, is what you would get. So there's really two distinct things happening. The lip trill lets us very easily observe how a given vocalist is or is not using airflow. So for example, it's very common, and this is just one thing that you might observe, it is very common for vocalists to pulse their air as if they're going to use air when there's a pitch to sing, and then they stop it when they change pitches. But that's not really how we want to have our air column engaged when we are singing songs. We want the engagement to be consistent so that we can then observe that and say, okay, cool, now can you keep the lips going the entire time? Ah, right, okay, now we can start doing other vocalizations, we can take that from there. Lip trill is also great in evaluation when you're working on melodies of songs. It can show you where you are engaged in maintaining your airflow, maybe where you're not. Why it allows the thyroarytenoid to cricothyroid dominance transition to become a little bit easier is because the lip trill, like straw phonation, is what is called a semi-occluded vocalization. Partially blocked vocalization. It's semi-occluded or partially blocked. What effectively happens is that the lips serve as a pressure barrier, and that takes a bit of the weight of the air column off of the vocal fold. And so in a vocalist that is still working on their registration event practice, it is common to have more vocal fold engagement, vocal fold tension, than is strictly speaking necessary. So the lip trill can help us to release a little bit of that engagement and start to feel that transition and how we can make it smoother and smoother. What I also frequently say when I'm working with the lip trill or teaching it or making a video about it is that one of the things that's a little challenging about it is that it does require some translation. So because the lips are serving as that barrier, taking a bit of the weight of the air column off of the vocal fold, when you remove that barrier, you have to learn to keep the engagement in the vocal fold similar to what it was when you had the lip trill going. So it takes a little bit of translation there, a little bit of practice time. But that's why it makes it easier to make the transition back and forth between cricothyroid dominance and thyroarytenoid dominance. And yeah, I hope that answers that question. Feel free to follow up with any of these questions, really. Feel free to follow up in the comments if something's not clear or I need to elaborate further. I have a question about technique and performance. Does or should technique change when you use a mic or amplified sound? I have read of aging classical singers who could no longer sing on stage, but prolonged careers with good mic technique. What do you think that means? Does one sing differently with a mic than without? Do most of our current pop and Broadway, folk, and so on artists sound pretty much the same without amplification? other than volume, I mean. So this question is huge, and I will do my best to keep it succinct. There are a couple things here that we should consider carefully. One, once a microphone is involved, all bets are off. So when you talk about folk singers, pop singers, Broadway folks and things like that, who knows what they sound like without the microphone? So first of all, realize that, pitch correction, volume attenuation in the form of compressors and limiters, as well as equalization. Equalization is like volume for certain frequency bandwidths. You can kind of turn up a certain area. If a vocalist had like a really dark voice, you could brighten it up. Or if they had a really bright voice, you could tone it down. All of those things work in real time. So once a microphone is involved, all bets are off. One of the things that I often talk about here on the channel is that the microphone I'm using is an Audio-Technica Pro 70. It's going straight into an SSL6, and I have no equalization engaged on the channel, but I do use a compressor because I both speak and sing. And additionally, there's an additional compressor on the stereo bus. What that effectively means is that when I'm talking to you like this, and then when I sing, you don't have to rush and grab the volume knob, or I suppose it's more like poke at the volume button on your computer to hurriedly turn me down before I get all of a sudden very loud. I have everything set up so that it basically has a very even dynamic response, an even volume response when I switch back and forth between speaking and singing. Let's turn it off. So, first of all, you're going to notice that things are going to get a lot quieter. There's the stereo bus compressor. Now I've turned that off. This is my channel compressor, and now I've turned that back off. Now I'm talking in a normal voice. And there is the relative difference between when I'm speaking versus when I'm singing. Now, it's not just, it is largely so that you get an even response when you're listening back, but also knowing that the compressors are keeping my spoken voice at a reasonable level means that I don't start to strain my voice trying to talk to you. That I have learned, through making a couple of these videos, to talk at a more reasonable volume. That did lead to some vocal strain a couple hundred videos ago. Now, let's talk about classical music, classical vocalists and singers versus popular musicians using microphones, and even theater for that matter. So many different microphones, so many different techniques. When you see a pop musician that's using a handheld microphone or a mic on a stand, there are many, many different kinds of close stage mics in use. When I say close, it means that you would be right on top of it. You will generally see those vocalists, quote unquote, working the mic, which is to say that when they are using the mic, they will turn away, off access from it, or they will back away from it. 1 second. Seems silly to talk about this sort of, in sort of terms when I've got like these microphones like all over the place in here. So you get your pop vocalist, they will be very close to the microphone. This microphone likes you to be about 1 inch to 2 inches away. And then, if they're going to be very, very loud, they might move the mic or move their head off axis, or they might turn their head so that it's a little bit off axis this way. That is using the rejection from the polar patterns on these microphones to attenuate their volume. This microphone has a hypercardioid pickup pattern. So that means that from the, like this way is where you talk into it, it's a point. And the moment that you're out of that point, it starts to reject the sound. Now there are other peaks around this microphone, but mostly if you're using it, you want to be right in front of it. I've never seen a classical musician using a microphone like that. Generally, they're using boundary microphones. These are microphones that are in the general vicinity of where they are singing from, and they're going to pick up their voice in that general vicinity. So it's a very, very different thing. Theater will frequently use very small condenser microphones. Often they can vary. They can vary across the spectrum from omnidirectional, they pick up everything, to hypercardioid, they pick up just what's right in front of it. Frequently they'll be woven through their hair so that when you see them on stage, you don't see it at all. It's very innocuous. And those, I find those to be very, very tricky. I've worked with those a number of times over the years, and they can be very, very tricky to work with. They, like the microphone that I'm wearing, the lavalier mic, benefit from compression and things like that, so that, because the vocalist can't move the microphone, it's just there. So I hope that answers your question. A lot of different kinds of microphones. Different microphones require different techniques and have different applications. And when you got a microphone involved, almost any amount of processing now can occur to make that vocalist sound however they want to sound on stage. Great question. Super fun. And we could go on and on and on about that. Super fun. When doing vocal warm-ups, can I do it sitting down? Because I do the scales on the piano. I do stretches and body warm-ups before vocal warm-ups since I heard that's important too. Thank you so much. I am chasing my dream to release my own songs at an old age of 30, and your warm-ups and your channel helps a ton. Okay, so first of all, 30 is not so old, taking it from this guy. So you got a lot of time, but don't waste any time. I'm glad that you're getting to it. I wish you the absolute best. It has never been a better time to write, record, produce, and release your material. I look forward to hearing it. Please send a link to me through my website so I can have a listen once you get something out there. The stretching and warm-ups are awesome. I commend you for that. Frequently, we don't get our physical bodies warmed up when we're getting ready to sing. And that can mean that our vocal warm-ups take longer or are not as effective as they could be. Bravo, or brava, whichever. Really, really well done. Can you do them sitting down? Absolutely. However, I would encourage you to also do them standing up and see if there is a difference. If you notice a difference, try to replicate the sound that you experience standing up. Your overall posture and body alignment is likely to be better and more suited to efficient, effective usage of your core body muscles for the creation of subglottic air pressure engagement, quote-unquote support, if you like, for your singing voice. And it will be that level of engagement that you will have to try to bring to your seated position at the piano. I would also suggest that however adept you are at singing and playing simultaneously, that you do also make time to just vocalize so that you are giving your undivided attention to your singing practice. Wonderful questions, one and all. Thank you all so very much for them. I truly enjoyed it. Again, these are questions from comments. You can leave your comments anywhere on the channel. I read all the comments. And if it's a cool question, I'll grab it, and then I'll answer you here. Thank you, as always, for being a part of the channel. Thank you for subscribing. A big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Really appreciate it. I hope everyone's having a lovely day. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing, and hopefully we'll see you again. Bye.